Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mixing Music with DK, the mix down with DK, right? So today we're going to answer the age old question that I get on a regular basis. What the heck am I supposed to do with the two track? Now, in the current day and age, a lot of people buy beats. More importantly, a lot of people are too cheap to buy the stems, or they don't understand what an engineer can do with the stems. They don't understand the concept of the flexibility of being able to turn different elements up and down instead of affecting the entire beat. Whatever the reason, we as engineers far too often have to deal with stereo beats. Just a two track. Literally nothing else but just a two track. So today, I want to show you a song and a mix and exactly what I did to this two track and kind of the concept behind it. So the first things first, I'm going to show you guys my screen. We're just looking at this screen right now, and you can see that's got the Pro Tools session. This is a beat and a song. Let me show you what everything sounds like. This is by an artist. His name is Coco XL. You can find him on Apple and Spotify. Coco is a good friend of mine, and he's a great artist. So let's listen to this song, just about a minute of it.
Gotta stay on my toes before I end up with a toe tag. I used to want all the bad hoes, but now I want something that's gon' last. Watch me do my money dance. I bought when they told me I can't. Ayy, work to the M's up in mom's account. Could not give two fucks by the fame or the clout. Gotta stay on my toes before I end up with a toe tag. I used to want all the bad hoes, but now I want something that's gon' last. Watch me do my money dance. I bought when they told me I can't. Ayy, work to the M's up in mom's account. Could not give two fucks by the fame or the clout. Ayy, don't get me wrong, I'm still gonna be riding big pigeons. Boom, hey, I'm fly like a pigeon. Young XL on a mission.
All right, this song is actually really cool for multiple reasons, but I mean, I could talk about the master of this song. Like, we made it pump on the master on purpose. It sounds really good, but I'm literally just gonna turn everything else off, solo the beat, turn off the mastering stuff, the plugins on the master bus. We're literally just gonna listen to the beat. It feels good. It feels nice. Here's before. Okay, you can hear the before and after. The volume is actually kind of similar. If anything, it actually gets quieter after all of my processing. So one more time. So here's a little before and after. Before. It sounds maybe a little bit quieter. It's definitely fuller. It's definitely fatter. It's definitely much punchier. It's hitting you in the face just a little bit more. Again, with the two track, there's only so much that you can do. Like, you can't do that much actually because you're not given stems. Like, you can't just raise the volume of the kick drum or lower the volume of the hi-hats. You have to do it with the EQ. The problem is, if the EQ, the hi-hat is hitting at 6K and it's a little bit too much, which in this song, it's not, it's fine. If I cut out 6K, that means it's cutting out everything else. So there's only so much you can do. Like, mixing a two-track and making it hit a little bit harder is almost like mastering. The idea is the same as mastering in the sense that you don't have the individual tracks. You have to make it sound better with only the few tools that you have and without being able to access the individual tracks, right? So, like, you got to think about this differently. You cannot approach it like a mix, like a regular mix, although you will be using the same tools. So, before we dive deep into what I did and how I worked on this beat to make it just hit a little bit harder, I want to talk about the idea of doing too much. On a two-track, it is very easy to do too much. This is where the skill of when not to do something is very important. When do you not do something? When do you do something? And more importantly, if you change the EQ or the compression, how is it affecting different elements of the mix? you got to remember, this is a 2-track, not individual beats. So if you don't like the sound of the kick drum and you have to compress everything to make it fit a little bit better, you're not just compressing the kick drum, you're compressing everything. So if there's a kick drum and a snare hitting at the same time, that means you're lowering the volume of that snare. Or if there's a plucky melody type thing, that means every time the kick is triggering the compressor, it's lowering the volume. And this very easily can turn into like this pumping sidechain type sound, which if it can be done, and I did it on purpose in the master mix bus for the song in general, but in general, sidechain is not a hip hop thing, right? So how can you make this beat bigger, better, slap harder? I think the first step here is to know what music is supposed to sound like. The fact that I listen in this seat right here in this position, the fact that I listen to a lot of music that fits in this style of genre, hip hop music of various kinds, from really indie, more like, Them Changes or Dragon Ball Durag by Thundercat, which is really not hip hop, but you know what I'm saying, or like older Kendrick stuff, to newer like Tory Lanez type stuff, again with R&B more, but within the hip hop realm, right? Two totally different sounds, but me knowing and referencing a bunch of these songs, it shows me what the flexibility is. How much can I make the kick drum loud? Like how much is too much kick drum? How much is too little kick drum? How much is too bright? Like after a certain point, like Tory Lanez is the epitome of too bright vocals, right? But the point is, because I listen to and reference a lot of songs, I know where the boundaries are. I know how much is too much, and I also know what's not enough. So, because I listen to a lot of music, I want you to listen to this. Can you guess what I'm going to say? Again, this is just my taste combined. But before I even do anything, I identify that I want more drums, I want more kick and snare, I want more low end, I want it to hit a little bit harder. I don't feel like there's enough punch to the drums. And the biggest thing of all, this is a mono track. I know it's stereo, but look at the meters. It's literally mono. And here, there's a little bit of bass. Even when the bass comes in, just because I listen to so much music and I know what music is supposed to sound like out of my speakers, I know right off the bat that is not enough low end to be competitive with what's already on Spotify. I'm not even thinking yet about how to fit the vocals in. Usually with stuff like this, it comes in at the very end, or I mold the vocals to the 2-beat, which is what happens more often in my case. Either way, you're going to want to change it and mix it down a little bit before you adjust it to fit the vocals anyway, unless you do the vocals first, whatever, right? I'm just showing you the way that I'm doing it here. So let me go through the thought process. First things first, I create this Ozone 9 Advanced has a new plugin called Master Rebalance, and I'm cheating a little bit. This plugin is amazing, and it is the best plugin for 2 tracks because you see how it has 3 options here? Vocals, bass, and drums. For some magical reason, iZotope has created an algorithm where you can boost or lower the volume of an individual instrument in a 2-track. Yeah, so that means I can raise or lower the vocals in a 2-track, the bass, or the drums. So in this case, I wanted to raise the drums. And this algorithm isn't perfect. For example, if you raise the vocals, typically the same frequencies in the vocals are usually guitars or samples, keys, or whatever. So it's going to raise the things that are in the same, because it's a 2-track, right? You can't just EQ something, but it's still pretty good. With the drums and the bass, it sounds amazing, especially with just a little bit, because it's more transient based and less note based, where vocals is trying to like catch the notes, right? Listen to what this does. It's really awesome. And then I'll exaggerate it just to show you what it does here a little bit. So here's off. And here's exaggerated. here, it actually raises not just the drums and it's not just the kick drum. It raises the kick drum, it raises the hi-hat, and it raises the snare. This tool right here, it's not an end-all, fix-all, but used slightly, oh my gosh, this thing is amazing, and it has really, really, really helped my two tracks sound better. Like, it gives me a lot more flexibility. I can do things with the 2-track now with just this tool, maybe even a couple stacks of this tool, maybe couple different ways. It makes the 2-track so much more flexible. So because of this, I could basically mix a 2-track, almost, right? It's not quite perfect, and I think they're going to do more revisions, and they're going to get the algorithm better. And this is not, I think you can't get it separately. I think you have to get it with Ozone Advanced. I'm telling you, it's still worth it. Ozone 9 sounds amazing, and if they have it on individual sale or whatever, it's worth it. But if you don't, it's not a big deal. You can still do this with EQ. Now, I'm only doing it 1.1 dB, so I'm probably going to emphasize the drums differently with more EQ. So here's the big thing. With Pro Q3, again, another plugin that you may not have, but it's not about the tools, it's about the concept. So let me show you what I'm doing here. So here's before. Okay, this is 2 dynamic EQ points and then 1 static EQ point. This is big. I'm hitting the kick drum. And because the way the algorithm for FabFilter, a lot of other, including the Waves dynamic and a lot of other dynamic EQs does this, it only gets triggered, it only boosts it when it hits that threshold. So you can tell it's only boosting the kick drum. This is just another way of doing the Ozone thing, but manually. Here, I wanted that mid-range of the keys to go down. But again, dynamic because I want it to move with the vocals. Sorry, I want it to move with, where it's needed. Like, I don't want it to be cutting out statically. Last thing here. This frequency, just a little bit of that snare. I wanted a little bit more snare. Typically, that's the frequency to get a little bit more snare in. Okay, next one, R-bass. R-bass is really awesome. I don't know exactly what it does, but it basically adds harmonics below, like at a specific frequency. In this case, I set it at 80. Just a little bit of this goes a long way, but listen what it does to the low end. And then I'm going to move into the section with some bass too. Right now, I've lowered the gain to compensate, so I'm going to bring it all the way back up so it's the same volume. It's just adding that frequency here. So one more time. It's adding a little bit of distortion because I'm flipping it. Which is probably why I left it low. But this adds that low end. It adds that extra fatness. Okay, the next thing. It looks like I added a wide band at, how much did I add? 1.5 dBs at 88 hertz. Now, 88 hertz, 100 hertz and below, sure, it's a little bit of kick drum. And the way that I mix it, I like my kick drum to really hit hard around 80 to 200 hertz, that area. And anything below that to be the bass in 808, especially in this type of music. But 88, I guess it was bringing out the kick drum a little bit more, and it was bringing out the bass a little bit more. Also, I did a little bit of compression. See what I'm doing here? Just a touch of compression. With the sidechain filter on at 80, with a very fast attack and release. What I'm probably trying to do and what I can hear is that I'm balancing, adding the punch to the kick drum, but bringing up the rest of the stuff. So like I am literally, how do you say, I'm I'm compressing the kick drum. I'm making it punchier so it's less affected by the compression, and then bringing up the keys. So listen to what I do when I turn it on and off. You can definitely hear the kick drum go down. Now, I didn't add any makeup gain to make up for it, to make the kick drums where they were. I just left them quieter because I knew I'm going to make up the gain later. Okay, this is important. Everything that I'm doing is pretty subtle, and that's on purpose. I want to do things subtly on purpose. If I do too much, I can ruin it. But the thing is, the really cool thing is, even up to this point, with just these 4 plugins, it's changing a lot. Check this out. I'm making it a little bit more smiley face. I'm cutting the mid-range. It's gotten quieter because of the compression. I've squashed it. You can hear how much I've squashed it. This is so far, if I just left it here, it might not be good. It's a little bit better, but it might not be the best spot to leave it right now. So let's see what I did next. More low end. Because in this particular song, there was not enough low end. And here's what it sounds like before and after up to that point. Drums are much punchier. It's a lot more dynamic. It's hitting your face just a little bit more. Like, it's hitting a little bit harder. Sure, it sounds a little bit scoop, and I have changed the tonal thing, but I'm not going to lie to you. Just because I've, and you can hear this too. If you listen to a lot of music through your speakers or whatever you're listening to this through, the original 2-beat, 2-track is flat. I don't know how to say it. It's boring, it's balanced, it's flat. Sure, the drums are a little bit quiet. It's just flat. I think it might be the mid-range. There's a little bit too much mid-range. It's a little bit like this idea that you want flat frequencies across everything. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, flat frequency mixes are boring as anything. This sounds good. It's hitting harder. Check one more time. Think about this. Moving. Now it's moving. Like, it's getting you, it's hitting a little bit harder. Okay, this is the big one. This is the one that I'm changing a lot with. Just an imager. It looks like I set it at 784. I just probably threw it somewhere. And I added the stereoizer. I don't want to, mess with the frequencies. I just kind of want it to shine at the top end, I guess. We're going to hear before. So the problem with this is that it sounds good, but this could very easily make the snare drum, the hi-hats, everything too wide. So I would not go crazy, especially if you've got a mono beat. If you're lucky, most beats are not mono. This is just a really rare occasion. But there is something about the beat. Again, it's a little flat. I don't like that mono sound. And if you do just the high end, the mid-range and above, it doesn't flip the phase or do any weird phase things. Just by itself, it sounds a little bit wide, like the drums or the snare, the hi-hat, everything sounds wide. A little bit more wider than my taste than if I were to do it like with stems, but it still sounds good. I think it's still an improvement. So here's everything up to that point. It's a little bit more balanced. And here's the thing, it's not that different. And that's the point, right? Last thing, this is a Jason Joshua trick. I think I may have shown this on another. You're going to see this a couple more times. I'm going to do this in my drums video. I'm going to do this in my secret tricks from Jason Joshua, Leslie Brathwaite, like my different engineers that I study series. This is, I think I've explained it before, but if you haven't heard, NLS bus by Waves. The plugin is supposed to emulate a bunch of consoles. It's supposed to emulate the SSL console, the Neve console, and the mic. I forgot what it's called, but the one that's in Abbey Road, right? And this console, these things, the idea is you're supposed to put a bunch of these channel strips, one of these on each of the tracks, and it's supposed to emulate analog summing. It's total BS. It's total, how do you say, snake oil? But if you put 10 of them together, it does a little something magic. It's weird. The way that Jason Joshua shows it is that he adds a little bit of drive and goes each one's the next one, right? And he's making up for it. If you add drive, it adds a little bit of volume. So he's making up for it with every 3 plugins by cutting the trim just a little bit. So it's not adding volume anymore. It's just adding the harmonics and the, how do you say, the bleed and the idea, you get it, the saturation and the inferiority, which is analog. The beautiful inferiority of analog. People are going to hate me for saying that, but it's beautiful, right? The distortion that analog adds, it's a very beautiful thing and a warm thing. Let's check it out. Let's see what it does to the drums. Amazing. It's squashing it, it's compressing it, and it's distorting it. You can hear the little bit of the distortion, not too much, but just enough of it. This doesn't work every time, but in this case, I wanted that extra compression to really make the song snap. And it's awesome. Like, I think it fits perfectly. More importantly, let's hear what it sounds like before and after with the vocals.
See no competition, can't be no pirate cause my 2020. I had some homies that was packing semis. I used to flip quarters with a pretty penny. Then boys will switch up on you quick with a penny. Ain't no Vivin, but I was door to door. Pack on my back like I'm Dorbert Explorer. Keep taking my shots, I'm not worried about the score. That jealousy and greed will lead right to your core. Mama ain't getting no younger. Little homie gotta buck up. I see dead people like the Sixth Sense.
Amazing. Like what I'm hearing and what you could be hearing. Again, this is preference. You may not like what I did. But my big thing is that I did not like how flat and like the song is so flat, like it doesn't bounce. Something about it is not moving. I don't know what it is, right? But when I add these plugins on, when I do just this little bit amount, it's making the beat move with the vocals. It's dynamic. It's a little bit punchier. It's doing more. It's moving. It's active. I don't know how else to explain this, but I hope you're hearing the same exact thing. It's balanced, like it's fine. Maybe the drums are a little bit quiet, but it's balanced when I don't do anything. It's fine. It's like most mixes that people send me. Like, it's a good mix. Like, the 2-track would work by itself. But the thing is, it doesn't have the spice. Can I explain what the spice is, what the sauce is? I don't know what the sauce is, right? This is maybe, I will say, this wasn't an accident. For me, I wasn't just messing around. Maybe there was a little bit of messing around, but in my head, I knew exactly what tools I needed to use to give it that extra bounce. And for me, it was compression, it was saturation, it was bringing out the drums, doing things dynamic, and making it something that makes it not mono, right? So one more time, before and after.
See no competition, can't be no pirate cause my 2020. I had some homies that was packing semis. I used to flip quarters with a pretty penny. Then boys will switch up on you quick with a penny. Ain't no Vivin, but I was door to door. Pack on my back like I'm Dorbert Explorer. Keep taking my shots, I'm not worried about the score. That jealousy and greed will lead right to your core.
And like the mid-range is also competing with the vocals a little bit too. Okay, now with everything. So I'm going to leave the mix bus plugins on. So now you're hearing my mastering stage, which I do a lot of my sound from the mix bus stage, but let's look.
See no competition, can't be no pirate cause my 2020. I had some homies that was packing semis. I used to flip quarters with a pretty penny. Then boys will switch up on you quick with a penny. Ain't no Vivin, but I was door to door. Pack on my back like I'm Dorbert Explorer. Keep taking my shots, I'm not worried about the score. That jealousy and greed will lead right to your core. Mama ain't getting no younger.
The vocals are popping. Like the mid-range that I cut out in that first EQ is where the vocals are sitting. Like his natural voice is just resonating in that area. The vocals are popping. The beat is popping, the drums are popping, everything hits a little bit harder. This is just one way to do it, and this is kind of excessive. I'll show you some other ones, some other 2 tracks that I've done that are way less excessive. But please remember, don't copy what I do. Just take the lessons and the ideas, the techniques that I use, and try to make them your own. All right, that's the end of this video. We'll see you on the next one where we do another song, another 2-track, and kind of go more into detail there.